What did the naughty kid in your class do, and where are they now? Story 1.
I for Adam was one of the naughty ones in the class. Broken family background, childhood trauma, low socioeconomic status, and all that. Totally disruptive in the last few years of high school, late 890, and left school with no qualifications. Fucked about with drugs from being around 15 years old, 89, and ended up with serious dependency problems that can still impact on my life today. However, from the age of 1993 I also managed to turn my life around, retook my GCSEs, did my A-levels, went to a top London university in 1999 and graduated in 2003, and 1 year later passed my professional qualification. I literally had no idea that A-levels and university were a things when I was growing up on the council estate where I lived. I am now loving father of 3 well-looked-after kids, young adults. I have a successful professional career and run my own business on the side of a solid high-banked NHS role. I love my fitness and swim 4 to 5 times a week to a really good standard. My life is literally a world away from all that chaos of my teens. I didn't escape unscathed though, as the 20-year chronic drug use changed my brain chemistry to that of an addict. And I have attended 12-step fellowship program for the last 15 years to keep myself safe. I am genuinely remorseful about my behavior during school. I was disruptive during classes and disrespectful towards teachers. I likely made some people's lives hell. I think about this a lot. A crushing moment for me was when I was doing my A-levels and recognized one of the lab assistants as my old GCSE chemistry teacher. It turns out he left teaching due to the immense stress of teaching a bunch of feral high school kids, myself at the center of them, and took a much less stressful, less well-paid job as a school lab assistant. Around 2007, I bumped into my 4th and 5th year form tutor. I had treated him particularly bad. I took the opportunity to apologize for my bad behavior. Not sure if it made much difference to him, but I hope it did. Edit additional info. I have lost several old school friends and mates from those early days of fucking about to drugs. And some people, when I see them now, are really fucked with chronic lifestyle-related health conditions. I really am one of the lucky ones.
Story 2.
Most of the naughty kids in my classes were relatively harmless and didn't go on to do anything of real note. One got married at 18 and now has literally about 8 kids, but he seems happy enough. A guy from my GCSE art class ended up in prison for armed robbery when he went into a post office armed with a massive knife, and the guy working there put up a fight and pulled his balaclava off. Someone my brother knew throughout school had a really fucked up background and never had a hope in hell of turning out normal. He'd always been a bit of a pain in the arse but wasn't properly horrible until he started hanging around with some kids, one of whom is currently inside for dealing heroin, who were horrible. He ended up with a drug problem and a lengthy criminal record by his 20s for everything from burglary to threatening to kill his ex-girlfriend, and a lot in between. He's currently in prison for raping a pensioner.
Story 3.
That was me. I wasn't the worst of them, but I certainly wasn't a good kid. I was constantly wanting, getting into fights, destroyed and stole school property on a number of occasions. I was smoking weed and drinking from about 14. I was disruptive in class and always arguing with teachers. I wasn't a bully though, just a disruptive kid who wanted to make people laugh, but ended up annoying them more than anything. I went to college and dropped out. Got heavily into smoking and eventually got therapy for the difficulties that were causing all this. I later moved away. Went back to education when I was 20 and 30 now to study something I was passionate about. I'm getting married next year and ironically, I am now training to become a cognitive behavioral therapist.
Story 4.
There were lots as I grew up in quite a deprived area. The one that sticks in my head though, because he had the same birthday as me, is a kid who was good at football but otherwise an absolutely little prat. Thought he was Billy, big balls, acted up in class, smart mouth, bullied other kids. His mum didn't help because she kept telling people it was okay, that he wasn't very good at his schoolwork because he was going to be a famous footballer anyway. He's now been in and out of jail a few times for dealing drugs. As a child he never sees. And there's parts of the area he grew up he can't go into because he'll get jumped. Strange to because his family aren't bad people. His older sister went to uni, has a good job, a nice house in a nice area and married with a small kid. So don't know what went wrong with him.
Story 5.
The naughty kid in my primary school was uncontrollable. He moved next door to me for a few years. One time he sat outside his back garden on the footpath and hit it with a hammer until he made a dishbowl-sized pothole in the tarmac. Another time, he was releasing strips of flaming toilet roll from his bedroom window, which carry surprisingly far on the breeze, and found it hilarious. Another time, he took me into his house to show me the escape hole he had cut in his bedroom floor which led into the kitchen downstairs. A real 1-foot square hole he had cut through his floor from the bedroom to the kitchen. This is all true. When we were in year 4 he was seriously burned to his face and body when an aerosol exploded in a bonfire while he was adding stuff to it. He was out of school for weeks and he made a few trips back to see everyone and his face was all pink. He recovered well. I've seen him as an adult and he doesn't look scarred, but he seemed vacant like he had been lobotomized.
Story 6.
Some background context. His mother was apparently, to use the terms an 11-year-old would use in the 90s, really mental, so he lived with his rather elderly grandmother who loved him but really shouldn't have been looking after him. School holidays when he was in primary school were basically him running riot. He wasn't much better in school, liked to use his fists. He was in the remedial classes for behavioral issues, academically quite bright but just no support at home. His mum was in and out of the local mental hospital, and when she was in the picture, she could be very aggressive from what I've heard. Anyway, first week of secondary school and he'd phoned 999 to say the school was on fire. He was apparently caught making the call on the school payphone in the main corridor outside the deputy head's office. Instant expulsion and got sent to the council-run boarding school for kids with challenging behavior for the next 5 years. Unfortunately, all that did was expose him to other children who were unmanageable, and he spent most of his teen years in trouble with the police. He got a former classmate with a learning disability pregnant at around 19 years old and has now spent the last 20 years in and out of prison or secure hospitals. Because he developed paranoid schizophrenia, likely what his mother had, exacerbated by drink and drugs. There was another boy, not quite as naughty, but with concerning behavior that would hopefully be red flagged nowadays. Turned out his mother was pimping him out to local druggie pedos at 8 years old.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to comment your opinion about these stories, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories.